All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this webinar on cut hidden costs in your maintenance operations for 2026. My name's Nate. I'm with Lula, and I'm really excited to bring this presentation for you and excited also for the host that we have here who's going to be presenting. I've got my colleague, Todd Schieffer. Todd is a true industry veteran. While at his time at Lula, he's worked with property management companies that truly cover the spectrum, those that are as small as 50 doors to those managing thousands of doors, various forms of management styles and structures, owner operators, as well as third party companies. With his expertise, leveraging Lula's access to data, he helps property managers find the right solutions for their maintenance operations, including ensuring integrations make sense, as well as lining up best practice SOPs with our coordination team and more. Todd, thanks for putting this together. Excited to have you here, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, Nate. I appreciate it. And I'm excited to certainly talk through this topic that is near and dear to my heart, but I think probably most importantly, I know it's near and dear to your hearts because all of our customers and other prospects that I speak with, this is what's top of mind, right? It just goes to the natural conversation around how can we make maintenance work for you all? And we can start that by identifying and then figuring out how to conquer these hidden costs. Let's dive right into kind of strategies for making maintenance easier, right? That's what we're all about here at Lula. And there are many considerations that go into that. But today we're going to focus on those that can identify and attack hidden costs. Understanding a little bit about what Lula is and how we operate. We are, first of all, a technology company, first and foremost, right? So we like to think of ourselves as certainly technologists, data specialists, but as important to that, we are also people teams, right? We've developed processes, technology, people teams enabled to really get the most out of making maintenance easy for you all, right? And our setup is we're here to deliver maintenance through a tech-enabled coordination and vendor network, right? We've got 9,000 fully vetted and insured technologists that work for us, pros that we deploy around the company in the 50 plus markets that we operate in. I think highlights of that include making sure that we are always on top of handling whatever work orders come our way. And that's both on occupied maintenance as well as make ready and turn services, right? A hallmark of our program is that we integrate with almost every property management software platform. So the idea is that we can not only operate and execute on work orders at a very high level, but we can also push that data into your PMS system to keep you and your teams very, very efficient and work orders flowing very well. Absolutely. One of the guarantees that we provide is that we're going to complete the jobs that you send our way, and we're going to make sure that you and your resident partners are completely satisfied with the work that we're doing on your behalf. Currently we're in 50 markets. We are in pretty aggressive growth mode, in large part based on the demand that we have from existing and prospective customers. So we work from, like Nate mentioned, customers as small as 100, 150 doors, all the way through what we might call national accounts, right? So big institutional companies that might own and manage tens of thousands of doors. When those companies call and say, hey, we'd like for you to open up a new market for us, of course, we will do that to accommodate them where we can. And then we also work with what we call regional customers. So those that are 2,000 doors and under in each of these markets as well, right? So 50 markets currently. Seattle is coming up next. If you are in a location that's outside one of our existing markets, we'd love to hear from you, right? So we're always happy to considering opening new markets for those customers and prospects that can use us. A little bit about Lula, right? Of course, we are based here in Kansas City, right? So just kind of finish up that part of the presentation, but we do operate pretty much nationally, right? Let's transition over to what we're here to talk about very specifically today, and that is how to cut and identify and cut hidden maintenance costs. First, let's take a second here and talk about what are some of the different approaches to maintenance, right? So we know some of you will deploy, full in-house teams. So what that looks like is you have what we call W-2 in-house technicians, right? So you're actually employing folks to go out and handle work orders that come through on your behalf. Now, we are pretty agile in that we support all different types of property and portfolio styles, right? So from single family rentals that might exist in a single or multiple scatter site portfolios. That's something that we handle really, really well. But we also support operators that are in the multifamily space that might have single communities that are denser, right? Different approaches to maintenance probably apply more frequently to different portfolio styles. For example, MFR, we're seeing a lot of in-house technicians. With those types of setups, we are typically there as a supplement or an overflow resource for when you need specialty technicians or when your in-house teams just get overwhelmed by the volume. We also see and work with companies that deploy a third-party model, right? So that's obviously sort of wheelhouse for Lula. Because of our vendor solutions, we can be a true outsource solution. And really, many of our customers deploy us in what has become kind of our wheelhouse go-to program, which is a comprehensive third-party solution, right? So you don't deploy any in-house technicians; you only use Lula. So we coordinate, 100% of the work orders that you send our way, and we do that through our trusted vendor network. There's also, of course, a third version, and that's a hybrid model, right? So you primarily deploy in-house or you primarily deploy third-party, but you also have a little bit of the opposite to supplement that work, right? So with us, we are here to be the right solution at the right time. And if you need us to be a supplement to your in-house team, wonderful. That's something we can certainly handle. If it's more appropriate for us to take over a full program, we're, of course, more than willing to accommodate that as well. So as we dive into what are some of the key factors that go into what is the right program for you and how do we really identify and then nip out those hidden costs, right? So let's start with the start, right? So in all cases, we're looking for some, clear, and this seems like common sense, right? In many ways, but not all outfits are really set up to identify these things effectively. So let's talk about them. So the desired outcomes in all cases are, certainly we want to make sure that we're focusing on resident satisfaction, right? So I think we can all start with the premise that it makes sense and it always would be the case that we execute on work orders at a very high level, right? So we're going to go out, we're going to send out appropriate high quality pros that are expert at their job, and we're going to get those fixes done, right? So we're going to swap out that HVAC system or water heater or whatever the case might be. But historically, I think the resident satisfaction piece has been secondary, right? So I'll get to it when I get to it. I'm going to focus on maybe owner and investor satisfaction over resident satisfaction. And that's been primarily historically a little bit of an afterthought. That's not the case anymore. And so if you happen to have that approach, right, whether it's explicitly or maybe subconsciously, probably time to change that thought process a little bit and really focus on that resident satisfaction piece. So we know if that's a desired outcome, where you're going to see that most frequently show up as a hidden cost currently is one, if your residents are directly, telling you, giving you that feedback, you're going to see it show up in the form of poor reviews, right? If you are getting negative reviews or your maintenance partner is getting negative reviews on your behalf, that's a problem, right? So you can identify those things and see them pretty quickly. Another huge factor, right? And this is a little bit of a stat that we'll show later on in this presentation, but there's a really clear indication that when a resident is not satisfied primarily with maintenance solutions, they do not renew leases, right? That clear, bright line between resident dissatisfaction and refusal to renew leases is a massive issue, right? Certainly you can find that out after the fact, but you need to be paying attention to those resident churn rates and then identify, was this a factor of maintenance, right? The next, obvious impact point is owner and investor satisfaction. When they are seeing that your properties are not renewing, right? Leases aren't renewing, and they identify that perhaps that was due to maintenance dissatisfaction on the resident part, that owner and investor partner is probably going to be pretty unhappy that that metric wasn't paid attention to. And that again shows up in similar, but on the opposite side, owner churn, right? We see this all the time for other companies that we take over from that they've lost owner investor partners, right? So they've lost big chunks of portfolios or maybe onesie twosies because they were ineffective with maintenance solutions in the past. And that could show up in a number of different ways that we'll talk about. Could be pricing, it could be just complaints from residents, could be asset management that's been poor, either from a cost perspective or from a timing perspective of getting a property turned, and those types of examples. Nice little segue there in terms of asset performance. So we want to make sure that we are paying attention to, getting the most out of these properties for our owner investor partners. So If we're making unnecessary or premature repairs or premature replacements, that's a problem. So your owners are trusting you with their properties, one, so that you can, help them achieve NOI. But big components of that is, can we make sure that their properties are performing at a high level, that we're not doing unnecessary repairs and replacements? And then when properties do need to be turned, all of a sudden we've got this massive cost that goes along with the turn or renovation, right? So making sure that we're staying on top of these things up front and avoiding that hidden cost is always very, very much appreciated and required by your owner partners. Maintenance team efficiency, right? So as you go through and you evaluate, what does my internal team look like here, right? If you have a thought around my team's bloated, I have way more folks that are addressing maintenance that I'd like, or that the numbers suggest I should. It's time to look at your processes, right? Can we say that the time is right to right size my staff, or can I redeploy folks to do higher value work, right? Other than babysitting maintenance work orders, that's a great place to maybe to evaluate. Are our maintenance operations set up the way that we want them to be, and are they really delivering the right operational value to us? Okay. And similarly, right? So if you've got a lot of folks tied up in your maintenance infrastructure, what is the opportunity cost there, right? Could they be helping you with resident satisfaction or owner satisfaction, right? And then last, I think, is probably something that most folks that we talk to see very frequently is they have trouble maintaining, keeping maintenance staff. That might be either internal technicians on a hybrid model, or it can also be maintenance coordinators or property managers that are also tasked with handling maintenance operations. That team morale piece is a real problem and hidden cost for those folks that struggle with this. And then the last is, I think probably a common sense observation here, but we talk about kind of table stakes that go along with good maintenance is when you're struggling with maintenance operations and infrastructure, you really can't grow your business, right? All of your time is spent with handling fires that are coming along, managing staff that are struggling with the rigors of maintenance coordination. What suffers the most? Your ability to grow your business, right? Inefficient operations and lack of time to focus on going out and talking with new owner investor partners is a huge issue. So that's where we see very, very frequently hidden costs showing up that are associated with maintenance. So we talked a little bit about, what those and how those show up in your business. Let's talk about very specifically how to identify those so that we can ultimately address and fix those problems. Work order level metrics, right? And many of our customers that are what I would call national accounts, right? And again, kind of describing that institutional investor, those property management companies that are managing, thousands or maybe tens of thousands of doors, tend to have a little bit more sophisticated infrastructure around how they measure work order level metrics. Okay. Scorecards are common, paying attention to certainly costs, but also maybe vendor level specific or work order level specific metrics is the norm for them, right? But if you are a more what I might call regional level customer, you might not have that level of access to metrics, right? And then two, just the ability to understand exactly what those metrics mean. And so by paying attention to those, and that can happen certainly when you're working with a solution provider like a Lula, we are tracking all of these things, right? So we are tracking things like how quickly are we scheduling with your residents? What's the effectiveness of our communication? How frequently are we closing tickets on one trip resolution, right? So there's plenty of things in addition to just rote cost that allow you to really track what's going on with individual work orders and also individual vendor partners, right? By doing those things, you can not only identify, but also manage what some of the ongoing issues are in real time so that you can avoid some of these hidden costs that we're talking about, right? Other things that we see very frequently are you're getting scores from residents, right, that are not where you want them to be. If you see those happening and occurring over time, then you can identify we need to up our game here. And that can be remedied in multiple different ways that we'll talk about in just a moment. Clearly, lease renewals, right, is an obvious indicator of resident satisfaction. If you are seeing non-renewals, right, you need to be asking yourself the question, and probably more appropriately, asking your residents the question as to what's making that up, right? So why are you not renewing those leases? So when leases come back at a lower renewal rate than you've seen in previous years, need to make sure you're identifying, was that a maintenance issue, right? And how can I rectify those so that we can make sure that we are renewing more leases going forward? And then the residual impact that goes along with that, right? So By renewing more leases, of course, your owner partners are much happier, right? Because they are avoiding cost of turns, and they are keeping their revenue streams flowing very, very consistently. And then the last piece is that owner satisfaction piece, right? Without tracking costs, you might not be able to really identify, like, is my owner going to be unhappy with this situation, right? Very frequently, we talk with property managers who say, hey, all of a sudden I'm getting a lot of shtick from my owner investor partners because costs are rising a little bit, or it's inconsistent with what they've seen. They'll try to attribute that to just lack of savvy or lack of knowledge on the owner's part around this is what things cost now. But very frequently, it's a function of just the property management company not really having a pulse on things because they're not tracking things as well as they could have, right? And then certainly we have a specific mention here around emergency work costs. Right? So obviously that is just a fact of life in our industry, but those things can be managed by taking better care of your properties up front, right? Preventative maintenance, predictive maintenance, scheduled costs can all avoid some of these heavy emergency work costs that we see. So we talked about like some obviously identifiable issues that go into kind of hidden maintenance costs. Now let's talk about how we might avoid some of them, right? Some of this will be just very specifically and obviously tactics that Lula has deployed over the years to make sure that we are doing our part to help avoid these hidden costs, right? And I think in a great way, right? When I talk about these things with existing customers or even prospective customers that we might work with, I always get the feedback that this feels so common sense, right? And I think it is in many ways, right? So what we've tried to do here at Lula is take the feedback that y'all have given us, right, around what makes sense, where you have inefficiencies, frustrations, maybe choke points in your processes, and we built our systems, people, teams, technologies, et cetera, to specifically address those, right? So if this feels like common sense, that's probably good, but very specifically things that we take into consideration when we are doing upfront work in terms of building our vendor networks in individual markets. Those steps go a long way in terms of helping us reduce hidden costs for you, right? So the things that we focus on initially when we're talking about vendor network are what we might consider kind of table stake stuff, right? We only want to work with the best pros. And that to us means those pros that are professional, that are experts in their field, that are able to communicate with your residents and with us very effectively, and they're able to work quickly, right? The things that we look for initially are, of course, proof of insurance. Every pro that works with us has to be insured. Everyone, of course, has to pass a background check. If they're a trade, they must be licensed, right? And we track all of those things on your behalf and maintain those compliance measures so you don't have to. Very, very important part of that. We have an internal, what we call provider success team that is consistently, not only when we're setting up a new market, checking performance and reviews on prospective pros that want to be a part of our platform, but we are also constantly analyzing and optimizing the performance of our networks, right? So we want to make sure our pros are always working at that very high level. So the work that goes into the upfront identification of the pros that are going to work with you, is a massive part of the success that ultimately that you'll have, right? We talk about things like vendor diversity, right? And I know you all have the examples because I hear them from you around, I have a great plumber, right? I have a great electrician, a great HVAC person, and he's my go-to, right? And then all of a sudden you start to see a little less responsiveness, right? Maybe it takes a week to get out to that property that used to take 24 hours, or maybe you see price creep, or maybe you see quality creep, right? Around those types of things. So it's important to have a diverse vendor network so that you can constantly spread out that work and keep everybody working at a very high level, right? Within Lula, if you're familiar with our model, you know that we are staffing multiple pros deep in each service category in every market that we operate in, right? One, we want to make sure we're always avoiding those things like quality creep or price creep or timing creep. We want to make sure that our pros, in essence, are competing with each other to make sure that we are always optimizing the quality that we deliver to you and the pricing that we deliver to you. So vendor diversity is a massive impact around the success of avoiding these hidden costs. In terms of selecting providers, and they operate within your technology, right? One, hopefully they're able to accept work orders and be able to within your PMS, and then also be able to push updates back into that platform. That's certainly a hallmark of Lula, and what we bring to the table is that PMS integration piece. All of the data that we collect on each step of the work order lifecycle that we handle on your behalf, all of that data is being pushed into our system, right? So we can monitor and track the success and the quality and the timing of the work that we're doing on your behalf. But we're also pushing that data back into your PMS system so that you can see in real time what's happening on those work orders that we're handling on your behalf, right? So that visibility piece, the communication piece, the connectedness between, our pros, your residents, and the work that's being accomplished on your behalf really goes a long way in terms of helping avoid those hidden costs, right? Same thing is true with quote and invoice delivery. Can that be done in a streamlined way, right? So we are uploading those things directly into your PMS platform or delivering them, per your preferred workflow, maybe to an outside accounting partner or something along those lines, right? So choosing pros that are able to do that. Warranty expectations, when something goes wrong, right, you want to make sure you've got a reliable partner that's going to be able to go out and help you rectify that circumstance. Maintenance is messy. Things happen. Work orders don't always go as smoothly or as well as we want them to, but is that pro there behind you to make sure that we can make it right? Pricing, of course, right? So we're talking about hidden costs. Let's talk about the overt cost, right? We want to make sure we're working with vendors that understand what it means to work in the property management context. Pricing cannot be what it is in the B2C context, right? It has to be better than that. And Lula knows the value of making sure that we are market appropriate. And then last, communication, right? We need to make sure that everything is tied up in a bow and that all the required stakeholders are understanding exactly what's going on in every single work order. Quick note on turns and make readies, right? In every single market Lula operates in, we offer what we call occupied maintenance or with a tenant in place. For those properties that are in between tenants, we also offer those services, not in every market, but in 11 markets. If you'd like to know which markets those are, we're happy to share that with you individually. But the key three factors, right, that are just non-negotiable in every make-ready scenario in terms of avoiding hidden costs are speed, pricing, and quality. I think the adage for the service industry is around, 2 out of 3. That just doesn't apply here, right? We just know that turns and make readies are so incredibly important that we get all three of those rights. And that's why we've invested a lot of time and energy into making sure that our processes, our people teams, and our execution go to all three of those things. Let's get those properties back to rent ready as quickly as possible so that you and your owner partners can continue to realize revenue in a streamlined way. All right, we've talked a little bit about these things, but built-in tracking mechanisms that you're already aware of, right? Making sure that you're paying attention to resident feedback. That could be independent Google reviews. That could be individual job ratings that we request of your resident from every single job that we do. But making sure that you're really paying attention to those things so that you can be agile and change your approach as necessary. Owner feedback, obvious, right? When they're receiving invoices from you, or they might be receiving negative feedback from residents, making sure that you're being cognizant of what those are and in rectifying your systems and tracking policies to make sure that they make sense. And then tracking costs, right? Keeping a tab on what's going on in your specific market. What does market appropriate pricing look like? And are you hitting that, right? Those things obviously are a big deal in terms of making sure you're providing value to your owner investor partners. So a few obvious examples here. We talk, very specifically about what these hidden costs mean. We've identified ourselves and worked with other partners that really do a great job of bringing home exactly what these can mean, right? So we talked about resident satisfaction being a massive component of resident turnover. I think this is a conservative number, but for demonstration purposes, it's estimated that a full third of all residents fail to or decline to renew leases exclusively because of dissatisfaction with maintenance, right? So 1 out of every 3, that's a massive number. And I don't think that the industry had previously recognized that. Factor in that a turnover is going to cost you thousands of dollars in one hard cost, right? So to actually renovate that property or turn that property, in addition to lost revenue, right? Lost rents, all of a sudden, every single turnover or non-lease renewal becomes a massive dollar event for your owner partners, which then impacts their desire to renew leases with you all or renew management contracts. Owner churn, right, it goes 100% along with that, right? So when an owner does not have confidence that you are managing their properties well, of course, they're going to churn. They're going to move away from you, right? And that's painful for you all. And then the last piece is just staff turnover, right? Burnout is real with maintenance operations. And when your staff is unhappy, they are, more likely to leave, right? And the average cost to swap out a new employee, $100. And that's both real costs as well as operational transaction costs, right? So It's really important that we get this right, not only from an owner partner, from a resident satisfaction perspective, but also from your own staff's perspective as well. Next steps for us, right? If we've hit the mark with a lot of the things that we look for in terms of managing hidden cost and really delivering not just execution on work orders at a very high level, but when these things go well and we truly avoid hidden costs, we can really deliver the opportunity for some operational terrific outcomes for you all, right? Yes, we could talk about kind of the negative side of hidden costs, but when we get it right, there's some really great opportunities for business outcomes that we can help you deliver. That's what we'd like to do, is have that conversation with you to help you assess, where you are with your current operations, what we can help you improve if it's appropriate to do that, and then what that can mean for your business specifically. You can look for a follow-up note from us. We have an appendix here as well. We'll forward on this deck to you so that you can see not only the things we've talked about so far, but also some additional insights that might be helpful for you.
There are a few different resources that will come out with this deck. Todd briefly mentioned, but we have a little bit more of a detailed breakdown of the maintenance models and considerations if you're thinking about changing how you're doing things this year. A few different resources that go into further detail around hidden costs and ways in which you can prevent hidden costs, as well as some follow-up info with Lula to see if it's a good fit for you. So thank you guys all for joining us. We do greatly appreciate you all. And just in the next 15 or 20 minutes or so, you should be receiving a follow-up from one of us to send all those resources out. At any time you have any questions, you feel free to email us. You can always just check out the website and fill out a form. Todd's email will be in this deck, so you can also shoot him an email. One thing that we talked about, we wanted to make sure we got you guys something that might help set you on the right foot. Thinking about costs moving forward in the future here is if you have any past invoices or you have any current proposals that are sitting in front of you and you're not sure where those prices are standing, if they're good, if they're bad, if they're too low or too high, and we're always happy to provide an objective third-party opinion on that. Feel free to send them over to Todd, flood his inbox. He does not mind that one bit. Thanks everyone for joining us. I hope you guys have a prosperous 2026. We'll talk to you soon.